23 inhabited islands. They're all nestled in a 3-mile radius of the Stony Creek town dock. On the islands there are 85 homes with about 80 families residents. And they live in a variety of homes. Everything from rebuilt boathouses, custom-built chicken coops, converted Quonset huts, including a wondrous 27-room, 7-bath, 3.5-story high English Tudor house. And that's located off to the right on Rogers or Phelps Island. We'll be passing that big fancy island later on the trip. Well, the golden age of the islands was during the Victorian period, about 150 years ago. And before that building boom was over, there were 2 operating hotels on the islands, bar rooms and boarding houses scattered all over the group. There were 5 more great hotels roaring along on the mainland of Stony Creek, but they are no longer in operation today. Back in the early days of the century, when the trolley cars came down to town between the years 1910 and 1938, this was a bustling summer resort town and nicknamed the Newport of Connecticut. These are all just summer cottages out here. Nobody lives on the islands in the winter time. Really no trip place for man or beast. But in the summer, they do come to vibrant life. And this weekend is a good example of that. These islands chock full of people, lots of guests, parties, and maybe a beer or 2 open up. And that'll bring us to our first island here on our left. This is Wheeler's Island. We have a relatively new house over here on Wheeler's. This is replacing a house that stood out here since 1865. That one was torn down a little over a decade ago to make way for this brand new replica. And this is a recreation of the former house, complete with a cupola or widow's walk up on the peak of the roof there. We haven't seen that in over half a century. Last one was blown off during a bad storm, so nice to see that back in place. And very expensive when you're talking about building upon these islands. You can generally add about 40% of the building cost, and they've done a ton of work out here to make this place beautiful. Also new is the retaining wall that you'll see wraps around the whole island. That's all native Stony Creek pink granite, built by local stonemasons, and that's a real work of art. And we'll see a lot of fine stonework throughout our boat ride. Well, where the dangers of navigating a boat here in the Thimbles are the hundreds of reefs that litter the islands. Here on our left we have a large reef we locally call Grassy Rock. This one extends for over 200 yards up Wheeler's Island into the bay. There's acres and acres of solid granite over here on our left. Up ahead we'll take you through a narrow slot in the reef. Well, we're seeing the islands at about half tide now. The tide is rising. We have a normal rise and fall of the tide of about 6.5 feet here on the islands. And at this tide you do see a lot of the rocks, but at high tide they're covered up by water, so a good time to be careful. This is no place for the beginner boater or the stranger to the area to stray from the uncharted channels. When they do, they almost invariably get into big trouble and wind up smacking one of the rocks around here. All these reefs, mudbanks, and sandbars, they do have a good side to them, as they provide a bountiful variety of panfish and shellfish, and they are favorite spots for the avid fishermen. Well, at this time of the year, everything is starting to run down. Striped bass, weakfish, blackfish, porgies, and flounder can be caught, and the bluefish are showing up as well. Feeling around the mud banks for lots of clams and oysters. But you better watch out for the lobsters and blue crabs. They're crawling around out here also. And some of the best clam beds here amongst the islands is a big bay down there to the left. That's all very shallow water. There was a thriving oyster and clam industry here in town just about a half a century ago. And water quality has steadily improved in the last 30 to 40 years. So for over a decade now, we've had a local shell fisherman who has revived the industry. If you're eating in the area seafood restaurants, you're likely to be getting Thimble Island oysters and clams. And Connecticut ranks second behind Louisiana for oyster harvesting. Only thing is, our oysters are much, much better than theirs. They're more expensive. And we'll swing to the east now. Two lovely islands we call Cut and Two up here on our right. Right over here on Cut and Two West, we have a brand spanking new house. Greenhouse with the large chimney. This was put up 2 winters ago, and they pulled off a monumental task. They got this up in about 6 months, and on easy work working out here in the winter time. So that one's doing nice and still unoccupied. They've got lots of landscaping plans first. Well, for many years, these islands were together by a beautiful footbridge. Right above the island, you see those stone pillars rising up. That is the remnants of the bridge. It was Victorian carpentry. All made of wood. It simply disappeared in the storm surge wave of a 1938 hurricane. Well, 1938 hurricane was the worst recorded hurricane in the island history. And we'll hear a little about that storm. Well, this pretty great cottage here on Heights Cut and Two East survived the hurricane. The original builders of this house had a famous midget builder. She was a circus performer for P.T. Barnum in the mid-1800s. Her name was Little Miss Emily. And Little Miss Emily had a frequent visitor calling on her when she lived up there. His name was Charles Sherwood Stratton, but to the rest of the world he was far better known as General Tom Thumb, probably the world's most famous little person. And Tom Thumb called on Little Miss Emily so often in the cottage. At one point he carved his initials in the kitchen door. As a further proof of his undying love for the demure but diminutive little damsel, he carved her initials in the solid granite right out in front of the kitchen doorway for the whole world to see. And then the awful little scallywag ran off with another lovely lady and left poor little Emily to pine away there on Cut and Two. Just like a man, right? Can't trust him at any size. And they did a nice job renovating Tom Thumb's old outhouse up there. In the old days, most people did have an outhouse. Those days, the pipes ran right down the water. That's why our clams were so good. Well, during the Victorian era, real estate became so incredibly valuable, they ran out of islands, so they actually made 2 of them. Over here on our right, with the flag flying, small white cottage, this is Dogfish Rock. Less than an acre at high tide, but they do have all the modern conveniences over here. They have city water, city power, and telephones here on Dogfish. In fact, all the islands have telephone service since cables run out through the mud. Just a few of the islands have electricity, and then most islands have city water piped directly to them. And next on our right, this island has everything you can think of. And buildings around here. Just finished up on this house. This took about 3 or 4 years. And they did save some of the boathouse, or the boatman's cottage here in front, the stone cottage. In the old days, that was a boatman's cottage. And they used to store a beautiful little steam launch in that building. But they wrapped the new house right around the old boathouse. And off to the left of the boat now, port side, these are the farthest eastward islands of the island chain. I have Bear Island over there with that chalet-type cottage. And then to the right, Little Curtis Island. Behind these 2 islands, only a quarter-mile away, is next town over, the town of Guilford, and a small area called Old Quarry and Athletes Island.